welcome to another episode of Get Out of Rap. We are revisiting our lockdown meanderings with the legend, the one and only, the main man, Chris Rainsforth from the forum.
Hello.
Now, for those of you that didn't listen in lockdown, we would just randomly get on a podcast and just start chatting. And I imagine this is going to be the same as one of those.
Yeah, we tried to decide what we're going to talk about. Couldn't really decide on anything. So what will be will be.
So join us as we discover at the same time as you what we're talking about. But let's start with what's going on at the forum.
Um, Always, as always, Martin, we are busy preparing for something or other. We're always in that cycle. If you think about what we've talked about over every time we speak, this idea of the best practice program, this continual cycle of activity that hopefully pushes us forward bit by bit over a 12-month cycle, right? And that continues and ongoing. If you think about this year so far, on top of networking groups and our customer strategy and planning conference back in April, the announcement of the award winners in April, into then the sharing of those stories over the summer and where people have had impact. We now move into kind of what we talk about, some of the practical stuff that we can do as an industry to continue to raise standards. So we're heading head first into the autumn cycle, and that is our Raising Standards conference or Confri, because we have our virtual event kicking off in October. I should know the date off the top of my head, but I will remember it in a second. It's 13th of October. I think. Is that a real Monday? One of them. Yeah, 13th. That's a Monday, right? So 13th of October we start. There's 5 days of activity. So there's 19 different sessions throughout the week, a mixture of keynotes, workshops, technology showcases from some of the vendors out there, showing what they're working on and who they're working with. And then in November, we all get together as a community again for our in-person Raising Standards Day, which is a really practical day of collaboration, really. And what we're doing this year is starting to do some proper action planning, stroke problem solving, taking some of those problem statements that we're hearing people talk about and working together collaboratively to try and find some solutions of how we can move some of those issues forward in our organisation. So really looking forward to what's to come throughout October, November, and then we'll be appearing at the expo again. Back end of November, we're doing a couple of training workshops on both days. We've got a keynote panel discussion on the first day. So, it's a busy time of year, but every
Mm.
part of the year is busy, and that's what's great about what we do.
I love the idea of collaboratively coming together to talk about problem statements that people have already shared with you, and then the power of working together with different people, right? And
Yeah.
how do you crack some of those solutions and share with each other? Because I think we've always been very good in that industry, but you guys are at the forefront of bringing that together and actually seeing it through.
Yeah, and that the power of what we do, I think, is we bring people together who are willing to share. We've always had a very open door policy at the forum in terms of, come along with an issue. If we don't know the answer, we've got a big network of people that can help kind of discuss that, solutionize it, whatever it might be, and we do broader networking groups, we do these special interest groups where we dig into topics that people are struggling with or wanting to kind of develop their own knowledge and understanding in. And just bringing like-minded people together to talk about these issues can really help accelerate someone's thinking. We mention it all the time. At our heart, we're a learning organisation. That's what we want from this. We're not an association. We're not just a talking shop. This is about people coming together and really putting their thinking caps on to go, how can we take this problem and move that forward? Whether that's in resource planning, whether it's in insight and analytics and those things, whether it's looking at more of your operational improvement stuff around quality assurance, knowledge management, technology itself, L&D, all these things help the contact center tick. And there's a lot of people that look at the front line, the operational bit. Now you do a cracking role within the team leader community of kind of upskilling people to deal with the demands of that operational role. But we are really proud of being able to sit behind that a little bit and go, how do we make sure we're supporting the contact centre in the right way through the right best practice in planning, the right best practice in kind of reporting and insight and all that type of stuff? And how do we make that stuff better, which impacts the operational front end because they can understand it easier, they can act on it better, smarter, whatever those things might be. So it improves that full end-to-end employee and customer kind of journey experience, whatever you want to kind of term it as.
I think I can remember as a young operational leader, the first time I ventured into some of these other support functions, and you just think, God, they absolutely know their stuff. We have to raise our game here in operations because the level of detail and the level of planning that went into whether it was WFM or QA, I thought actually, that understanding led to us working together better, but also raising our own game. I just want to take you back. Actually, I've learned a new word, confry. Is that the plural
Well,
of conferences?
it's an in joke at the forum, so Dave and Phil and whatever. So every time we do something that's plural, we just add an I on the end, and that just pluralizes everything. So if I'm having crumpets for my breakfast, it's not crumpets, it's crumpie. If 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 we've got they're not best practice guys, the best practice guys. I don't know. Just shove an eye on the end of everything
I I
to
thought I was
pluralize it.
gonna. I thought I was picking up a new tidbit of information for. We go to a local quiz,
We're trying to get it into just the
common vernacular.
dialect of the industry. Yeah, just do it. What are you doing? I'm going to spend some time this year going to the forums confry. Brilliant. That's what.
Unfortunately, then that won't get me any points at our local pub quiz.
No, don't. I don't think it's in the dictionary. It might be. We've never tested the theory. Yes, but every time there's a plural of something, it's very
We're
sea
actually
joke that we
banned
have.
from our quiz at the moment. We have been
Why is that?
suspended.
Why
Uh,
cheating? Google it.
no, no Google. We were just winning too much. Um, we we would win occasionally, and then we gained another team member. And he is phenomenal. I mean, he spent the entirety of lockdown with a friend of his doing quizzes. There's this. It's nothing that he doesn't know. Now, I get more pleasure from thinking, have I answered before Neil and got it right? Because my role in the team is I make up the number. I make up the numbers. Um,
It's a solid role, motivational. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But the quiz master has asked us to take a few weeks off because he was worried that other teams would become disengaged. So anyway, you missed.
And if he can do that, that's good. If they've got
Yeah,
the confidence to bit of bringing it, especially in that industry, that kind of to say, don't come and spend money in this pub this week. That's brave. Do you know what I mean? If they're getting rid of 10 pint Martin, that's very brave. That's profit margins will be down.
well, they're doing a thing at the moment where in the lead up to Oktoberfest, if you order 2 pints, they give it to you in a Stein glass. So
I like that.
yeah, and it's really, really, it's something novel about drinking out of it. But it does mean that I say to Bev, I'm just going to have one more, and
Yeah,
it's
but
really two.
yeah, it's fine though, isn't it? These
Uh,
things, semantics.
you've also got the awards coming up, of course. Or they're no,
Yeah,
they're
so
launched now.
so our awards program again, learning. So it's about understanding what the industry can learn from other people. That's essentially what it is. And we put a lot of focus on that element of our award program. I still think I will do because I'm a bit biased, but I still think it is one of the best processes to go
Mm,
through in our industry from an awards perspective because not only do we do, it's fully helped with a load of external people from the industry to help kind of shape, the winners and the stories that come out of it, but the focus on the story. What are we going to learn? And we ask everybody that goes through the awards program a couple of questions through that nomination process. Like, what have you done? So that's, a given in it. What have you done? But how can the industry learn from it? Right, it's a question that we ask. How can the industry learn from the story you're telling? What are the key things that you think other people are going to resonate with? To get people to be really reflective on the journey they've been on, whether as a team, as an organisation, a partnership, whatever it might be. So we opened up awards nominations this week. Free to enter. You don't have to be a member. There's no massive cost attached to it. We don't believe in kind of charging people to enter an awards process. We think it doesn't sit right. So anybody can enter if they've got a story to tell. We want to hear the story. So you can go on our website. I'm sure, Martin, you can put links to that somewhere. But go on
Yeah.
our website, just go to the awards, click on enter the awards, and it's a really simple process. There's a short little nomination form, literally, really simple. What have you done? What can people learn from it? That type of stuff. We then ask by the end of October, early November, to submit a short video. And we say short video, kind of no more than kind of 15 minutes, right, as a maximum. The shorter, the better. Tell your story succinctly. And it's not about giving us everything at that point. It's about giving us enough that makes us want to learn more about what you've done. So really short, and your story better than anybody. So tell us your story, whether that's a transformation that you've done, whether it's you're in partnership with someone that you're working together to drive forward that, whether you're a team that's just doing some really good work, or you've got some individuals within your organization that every day they're just going above and beyond and getting the results that you need. They're open to everybody. We ask this little video, tell us a story. We watch those videos, we watch all of those videos, and that enables the judges to really understand at that base level what you've been up to. That'll generate a load of questions, and then we all get on a call throughout kind of January, February, March, essentially, to do that judging process where we'll sit on a virtual call and just talk through your story, and that's it. Just talk us through your story. We'll have questions, of course, but let's understand what you've done. So we find that a really, really, easy process for people to follow. And in some of the categories, especially in the Best Practice Awards, it's collaborative judging. So what we mean by that, it's very different, I think, to anybody else, where we will put different award entrants on the same call. So they might not be doing same work, so you're not competing against that person that's on the call with you. What it is it's kind of more of a focused networking group of kind of going like, okay, we've got three different individuals here. They might be doing something good in planning. They might be doing something good in quality, whatever it might be. We've got these different individuals here, and between us, let's just talk about it. So you'll have some judges on there, you'll have a member of the forum team on there, you'll have a number of the different finalists on there, and we just talk around the stories that you're all presenting to us as kind of entering the ward. And we find that that level of collaboration and discussion really enhances the process, because people just start learning from each other from day one in the process. And you can go, actually, that's a really good idea, and might not be my role that I'm in, but my colleague over there, have you seen what they're doing at X company in this space? You've tried to do that. They're doing a really good job of it. Let's get together and see how we can kind of move stuff forward. So we find that really, really powerful part of what we do. And then we get together in April and announce the winners. And as we always say, it's the best Tuesday night of the year. And we try to keep that cost to come, and you don't have to come. We don't force people. You're not going to not win if you can't make it. I mean, we appreciate travel, and we appreciate budgets, and we appreciate all those things. So it's not if you're not there, you're not going to win anything. And we only invite the winners. It's everybody can come along. Let's have a really good time, enjoy yourselves for the evening. And if you can come along, brilliant. And if you can't make it, we'll still get your prize to you. It's part and parcel of what we do. So yeah, and we're very proud that we're on the awards trust mark. We've got the
Yeah.
top level of the awards trust mark, and that's quite, there's a lot of things we've got to go through, a lot of steps we've got to take in terms of being awarded that. So we know we've got a fair process. We know it's an engaging process, and then the stories that come out of that. I mean, we had 100 case studies nearly this year. off the back of the people that went through the process, and that's just a phenomenal amount of insight and learning back into the industry that we published and sent out and did that. So again, it's just about let's just learn what people are doing. So as an industry, we continue to get that little bit better.
Well, it's like you say, you're a learning organisation at heart, right? And what another great example of taking an awards ceremony. So you still get to celebrate people, but everyone can learn from each other. And am I right in thinking that for people that couldn't make it, you will hand deliver their awards in fancy dress?
But it depends where they live. That's all I'm saying on that. But we will get you your award there. We always do.
So how long have you been in the industry now, mate?
I first put on a headset in 1995. I was in college, so yeah, 95, 96, around that, around then, when I first slipped a headset on. I was doing, I think I've told you before, I was doing let's call it home improvements, not outbound selling of double glazing. It was home improvements. That was what I was doing on an evening after college.
So now, my mental arithmetic is terrible. How many years is that?
So we're on 25 now. So 25 to two-thirds, 30 years
And in
coming up. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, because me and you are the same. I think I was 97. Very similar. Mine was stationery supplies. So you know, I got to know staplers and bubble wrap very well. Uh, in 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 all of this time, do you think our industry has made significant steps forward across the board?
Across the board, no. But then in a lot of cases, yes. I think there's two bits to it. I think technology has enabled things to do differently, right? So I think the advent of improved technology has always pushed us along on the journey. To go back to that 1995, 96 time when I was in an outbound environment, there's no dialers or nothing like that. It was very manual dialing a phone number. And that phone number came from the phone book, right? It wasn't, there's no science behind it. It was literally turned up and you'd get told if you're doing A, B, C's or D's, right? You kind of go like, you're on there. And that's how scientific it was, right? That's it. And then what geographical area you're doing. So they'll be saying, "Oh, we've got fitters and salesmen available in Bradford, for example. So want everyone to concentrate on the BD postcode, right? And that's what you'd go after. And then that was the science, right? And it was availability of people, both fitters and salespeople in region, and that could switch from day to day. Bradford are full for the next couple of weeks. We're now concentrating on Pontefract, or we're concentrating on Wakefield, or we're concentrating on whatever, right? So that was the science behind it: availability of fitters, availability of salespeople, and it was then just rotating through the alphabet. It was ridiculous, right? But you kind of go forward a couple of years, that database of names then was starting to get a little bit smarter. So, not saying it was ethically correct, and it's been dialed back a bit since then, but then data sharing became available. So when you were kind of doing stuff and data became available, you were accepting your data to be used, all that type of stuff. You started getting a smarter list of people to call, and then dialers came in, and then that would take out some of that legwork. It just move you on to the next person and all that type of stuff. So all that kind of made life a little bit easier. The prospect list you had became a little bit smarter, so your conversion rates increased because actually you're speaking to more people that actually wanted to speak to you, rather than just cold calling everybody. So all those things kind of helped us move on. And then similarly, when I moved into more inbound type roles, the advent of things like IVR and stuff like that, that helped do stuff, helped us be a bit smarter in terms of, do we single skill people? Do we multi skill people? Can we invest in people? All that type of stuff helps us change and do things in a different way. I know it's a potted history, but that's always been the
Yeah.
case. Up to now, that continues to be the same. We look at other bits of what we do. I think more focus on people is really apparent, especially over the last few years, and that's been a real significant change for us, and one that has to be applauded. I think that there is
Mm,
a more focus on people, especially on things like well-being and that type of stuff. I think that having that conversation is needed and will continue to be needed. As generations shift, um, our emotional engagement needs to shift. I think that's the difference. That conversation needs to continue. If you look at generations, and we talk all the time, I keep talking about my generation, but I think as we've got more accustomed to thinking about well-being, as this next generation start to come in, it's an expectation now. It's not a nice to do.
mm,
It's an expectation there. If you go back to when my dad was working, it there was no expectation. No, that was you just had to suck it up and get on with it, sunshine. You
mm.
know what I mean? There was and so whether rightly or wrongly, I'm kind of can't society's changed. So we've and I think the industry is changing with society, and that's a good thing. So there's a lot of good stuff there. If I look at practical stuff, I think we're still behind the curve in some areas, and not in all areas, but in some areas. I think, I was doing a networking group today. Funnily enough, I was doing a networking group today, and one thing stood me. I was speaking about future proofing what we do. One of the things we talked about, and I'd kind of asked a question. What areas of our business are most at risk of being left behind currently with the advancement in technology, AI, whatever it might be, what parts of the business are running the risk of being left behind? And a lot of people said L&D, which kind of surprised me, but then didn't surprise me when we got into some of the detail. So it surprised me because we've got to focus on people. Everyone's talking around development. They're talking about micro coaching. We've got all these new tools coming out that are measuring performance in a different way, prompting people where their skill gaps are. All these things happening as we hear from people talking about this stuff. All these fancy things are available. And we've got to talk about it, going, okay, so why do that? And I still don't think as an industry we've got a handle on remote working and the development of people in those remote
Mm.
work. I still don't think holistically we've got some real best brilliant practice in induction and onboarding people in those environments. And then one of the other people that were on the call talked around how they're still role playing. And I kind of went back and went, again, you think about, I was role playing in 1996, right, for objection handling, and we're in 2025, and we're still role playing. And I've never been a fan, and this might just be me. I've never been a big fan of role playing. I just don't think we can ever replicate the true emotion and the true behavioural response of a customer when we're trying to fake it. But we're still doing that. So when you think about it from an L&D perspective, that is still core to our induction process. That feels to me that we need to be doing something smarter now with what's available to us to get people prepared to deal with the reality of the emotion of a customer. And I think, in a long way around your question, yes and no. I think we have moved
Yeah.
massively forward, and there's been some brilliant initiatives and some brilliant examples of people doing some brilliant stuff. But there is still some pockets within our industry, both at an organisation level and a kind of functional level, which still fall short, I think, of what you would be expecting them to do in 2025.
I think it's a fascinating subject that you've brought up there from the feedback from that group. Is L&D somewhere that's fallen behind or perhaps being a bit marginalized, especially when you consider that is an area where we've evolved, right? That we understand people's learning styles. I know of contact centers, a lot of them where they make accommodations for that and try and tailor how you take on information. But to your point, I mean, right back in the day before the year 2000, we would be constantly reviewing our induction and the academy or grad bay, call it what you will, and refreshing it and changing it based on each cohort that had gone through to try and really get it um, perfect each time, which of course is impossible. But it is interesting to think, I always used to feel a bit sorry for our L&D teams because they would do so much, create great material, and then have to shoehorn something that might take 20 hours into an hour. It was always the
Yeah,
first thing that got thrown out the hot air balloon if performance was dropping or volumes were going up. And they were on a bit of a hiding to nothing because it was kind of right, forget that course that is going to help people because we've got a new client. You need to train everyone on this. But oh, and I'm with you on role plays. You know, I, I still
it's
think that that feeling of, okay, now maybe sit opposite each other and you're going to be the caller and you're going to be the agent. You know, it's just not real.
and there might be people listening to this going, You're wrong," and call me out on it, right? If we're wrong, I want some good examples of role playing. Reach out to us because we'll talk about it, show us, and demonstrate how we can do it in a way that actually adds value. I've never seen an example of people where the people actually take it seriously. You know, it ends up just being a bit of a laugh and a giggle, doesn't it? You know, you kind of see it in the room. You know, where people will be, you know, purposefully obtuse just to
Yeah.
sit and wind the mate up in the training room. Do you know what I mean? It's like I just, I just there's value in understanding a customer's reaction. There's value in understanding a customer's emotion. All these things, but there's no substitute for the real thing when it comes to that. And AI might help us in the future, you know, more advancements that are happening with things like virtual agents and advisors and stuff like that. And being able to do that, you know, the technology is getting smarter, so you can converse over a call like this and have more of a kind of thing. If you can program the AI to act against a certain customer demographic, if you can take, you know, your quality kind of recordings and feed them back through of those true to life examples, and then put an AI agent speaking out to it, so you're actually using real life customer
Mm,
emotion and annoyance through that AI for me to converse back of how, and then you've got a reference point to how we actually handled it in that moment. That becomes then a bit more dynamic in terms of what we're trying
yeah.
to do. And you know, I'm not an expert in these things, but that's possible based on what we're seeing out
Mm.
there in the market right now. It's kind of how do we utilize what we've got and how do we kind of overlay the AI to make it really beneficial for people development. And I think we can do it. It just needs someone brave enough to have a stab at it.
Oh, 100%. If you think about how much we capture now of the interactions between us and customers and how you can do that at scale and then get AI to refine it to what are our most common objections or what are the things that customers are unhappy about them, you know, what are the top 10. We know that we could take that, put that in AI and generate voice from it, and then you could have interactive because the component parts, when you think about a role play, the component parts made sense in that it's a way to expose you to some of the challenges or what you can expect in the real
Yeah.
environment. But to your point, when you're doing it with your colleagues and you're new and you might be a bit nervous, I mean, I went the other way. I wasn't difficult. I was over the top, accommodating and friendly, and would say, "Yes, I would like to buy that. And do you have any other products that I could that I could buy, please? How useful is that? Oh, yes, good. I've got the biggest order I'm ever going to get."
Oh dear. Yes. So I think this. I think so. Yes. I think in terms of are we moving forward, I think yes, massively. The industry has moved forward massively. I think is there still some um, old school thinking, archaic processes, outdated technology, um, you know, um, practices that we would have been doing 10, 15 years ago that might not be as um, impactful today as they were back then. Is all that still happening? Of course it is, because the industry is massive. There's going to be good, bad, and indifference throughout the whole thing. But the more we surface the good and the more we identify the bad and understand how we can close the gap between those two things, just continues to push us forward. And I think that's one of the reasons I love doing what I'm doing, because I see examples of both continually, and being able to understand the bad stuff and give options and opinion and ideas of how they can move forward, against being reflective on the good stuff that you see and being able to bring that back to the audience. Go, I've seen a really good example of this. Why don't you go have a look at it? Or why don't you speak to that person? Let's get you together, have a chat. All these things. I think that's what the community that we're developing and have developed over 25 years is really coming to the fore now more than ever.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think generally speaking, if you think about the future, then um, I, it, I think you can only ever be hopeful about the future, our future as an industry, both from a development of technology and people point of view, but certainly from the positions me and you are in. Um, I'm really hopeful about those future senior leaders, the people at the very, very top,
Yeah,
the next generation of people that are coming through that might be heads of contact centers now, but they're going to be C-level soon, or they might be team leaders now and they're going to be heads of contact center in the not too distant future, both through what you guys do in the forum and being a learning organization, and also on a much smaller scale in the team leader community. Um, there are some inspiring, dynamic, super smart, inclusive, diverse individuals
yeah.
who will be fantastic C-level leaders. And I think you can only be hopeful when you think about that.
Yeah, I think you go back to kind of everything really. You go back to that point of, sometimes we don't move forward because the thinking we've got's outdated, and sometimes outdated thinking sits at that sea level, and that's not their fault. It's just you know, it's easy for me in my position to kind of say, that these things happen. But sometimes if you are set in a way, or you've got a strong opinion on something that, necessarily doesn't blend well with today's thinking, then that's when we can fall behind a little bit. You see it in organizations. We always use that Netflix blockbuster analogy, don't we? That's so outdated now. It's unbelievable. But the thinking remains the same. You're seeing it in other organizations. Look at banking now, right? We're
Mhm.
seeing banks fall by the wayside, and the traditional big banks are struggling to keep pace with some of the challenger brands that are coming through, because they're approaching things in a completely different way, in a modernized way, in a way that is kind of focused on that new generation of people, or that next generation of people. So, for all that we use that blockbuster Netflix analogy, that still thinking still is existing today. That you've got people that think, actually, we're okay, we'll just carry on doing what we're doing, and other people are starting to take over it now and going doing that. And that comes down to, at that senior level, what are we thinking about? Because if we continue to think the way we have, we're gonna fall behind. So there's a challenge there. I think one of the things I've been talking about recently, and I talked about it quite a bit really, but that whole landscape shifts, right? So we've talked about loads, haven't we? Customer expectations change; they're changing continually, But if you think about now, we the experience, they want more speed, they want more empathy, they want more personalization, they want smarter resolutions, but they still want that human element. These things are there. Do you think of our people in our organizations? They want more meaningful work. They don't want to be doing repetitive tasks all the time, and they want the technology that can really empower them to do their job effectively, right? So you kind of go, we've got to balance these things. And the good organizations that are doing it, we're starting to see that those roles are starting to blend more and more. So the silos that have hindered progress are starting to fade a little bit. And we're actually seeing more people being more collaborative within their organization to actually make the differences that really matter in those two brackets, the kind of commercial side of it with our customer expectation, the commercial side with our colleague expectation, and making sure those things have parity. And when we have parity across those things and we move things in the right direction, that's where we see the bigger improvements and the kind of more sustainable improvements happening. So we've got to think about those things as we if we keep talking about future proof, and we can't just sit and wait for it to happen, because it'll be past us and away before we even know it.
Well, that's the thing as well, isn't it? We often talk like we're observers when in fact we are in the game. We
Yeah,
we we can determine and we can make the change that we'd like to see when it comes to what do our contact centers look like?
yeah,
How do we show up better for customers? There isn't another group of people that is going to come and do that, and we're going, oh, that's
no,
interesting.
no,
We can do it.
yeah. And that sometimes I don't know if it's specific to our industry, because but I'm not close enough to other industries to pass comment. But what I see a lot in our industry is a lot of short termism in regard to senior level recruitment and senior level kind of, if you've got someone in role that knows what they're doing and they've been there a while, you see significant changes and those things sustain. If you are in a short term kind of mindset of let's parachute someone in, do 6 months, do a little bit of something, earn the money, brilliant, off they go to the next project. Typically, we either end up starting again or the problem compounds itself. We didn't really fix it because we haven't given it time to embed. But we've had an initial hit, that's good, tick to box, let's move on to the next thing. And that short term is what hinders people, because then they're in that constant change cycle rather than actually embedding processes, embedding policy, procedure, support, development, embedding these things so the roots are there that we can continue to grow and flourish, to use a really cheesy analogy. But if we build the roots of that, then those things come. At the minute, we're not focusing on the roots, we're focusing on the fluffy stuff at the top to get a pat on the back, and then I can move away. And that short termism hinders progress. If you look at some of the good organisations that we do, people in senior roles have been in there for a good period of time, and they've had chance to make mistakes. They've had chance to do, some of the wrong stuff and fix those things and learn from it and move forward again and be part of that transformation rather than just a rocket up someone's backside just to get a tick in a box at the end of it. It's just, I see it too often for it not to be coincidental. It's a problem that we've got, I think.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. As is always the way on our when me and you chat, we like to bounce around a bit. Is that Ricky Hatton's shorts behind you, by the way?
No, sorry, that's Joe Calzaghe.
Joe Calzaghe.
Unfortunately, not Joe Calzaghe, but I do have Ricky Hatton stuff in the house. It's upstairs, which very sad day at the weekend.
Very, 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 very sad. But let's talk through your backdrop. Sorry for those of you that are listening
But
in. It's just that Chris has a very interesting backdrop.
I'm a sports fan, right? So I just like sports. I like things that interest me, and have a story behind them. So Joe Calzaghe, they're probably one of my favourite boxers of my
Hmm.
generation. Not many people go through a full career undefeated, 46-0,
Yeah,
shocked the world on more than one occasion. I thought it was a great British boxer. Over here, probably the greatest of all time, in my opinion, from my era in life and people that I've seen box. That's Mike Tyson, and that's his boxing glove there.
wow.
This one here is, again, it's just a moment in time. So when George Groves fought Carl Froch in front of a 7
Yeah,
million
great.
people, right, whatever it was, right, that Carl Froch keeps pointing out, right, but I was there, so that's a signed glove of Carl Froch and George Groves, right? No value in it, but it's valuable to me because it's a moment in
Mm.
history, a moment in time. Leeds United, when we finally got promoted back to the Premier League under Marcelo Bielsa, that's the champions one that you see there. And then Phil the Power Taylor, the greatest darts player we've ever seen. No one will ever surpass him. And I'll never forget Rob Cross for ruining his retirement tournament by beating him in that World Championship final on his retirement match. Which, yeah, Rob Cross for me, worst darts player I've ever met, because he should just let Phil Taylor win.
And don't forget your
And then Gonzo is everywhere, so you'll see him around and about here, and then we've got him up here and up there. He's an Intel and he's here, um, and that's because that's what I used to get called at school.
so you've owned it. That's now yours.
I've owned it. Yeah, I don't care. I embody the spirit of Gonzo, his craziness, erraticness, his yeah, he is the kind of how I base my whole personality.
Well, hold on. I thought at one point me and you were going to go for, is it Stadler and Waldorf, the two grumpy old men in
Standing on
the.
Waldorf. But that might be that next generational thing. Give it 5 more years, Martin.
Okay.
5 more years. I'm
Which
still too. I'm still too young to be different to that.
I do have images though of me and you. I'm going to move to where you are so we can be in a care home together. I will still have
I'm happy
my
with that.
pod. I'll have my podcast equipment, and we'll carry on doing these because you've racked up probably more appearances on this than anyone else. And
I
that's
don't know if
because
that
you're.
says more about me or you. It's because I'm always available, and if people are watching, I am really busy all the time as well. And I don't have time for this, but I make time for it. People go, "Hey, Chris can't be busy. He's always on that bloody thing with Martin." But these are
Uh,
the things. But
I'm with you. I don't know what that says about either me or you. Is it that I'm annoying? I annoy you onto
no,
these.
no, no. I think I am annoying. My wife will definitely agree with that statement. Um, but I do want to finish on one thing, Martin, just because you mentioned Ricky Hatton there, and still flaky on the details, but I think it
Mm,
brings back into focus a lot of the things that we mentioned earlier about well-being and support and things like that. We've talked a lot, and you know, people always say there's always a difference to a public facade as a private facade, and I think if anyone is struggling, um, we all have at some point in life, I think, but if anyone is struggling, then do reach out to people and do ask for help. And I know it's easier said than done, and we sometimes get into a point where we don't want that help because we think we can continue to shoulder everything. But examples like the weekend again show us that
mm.
no matter how strong you think you are, you reach a dark place sometimes. And anybody that's listening to this, if anything, you just need to pick up a phone or you can always get in touch with me. I'm always up for a natter, and I'm always available for anybody that's going through anything because I think it's so important that we continue to shine a light on mental health, and especially in male community. And I'm not trying to segregate from that. I think everyone needs help when they need it, but we are so bloody stubborn sometimes that it becomes our undoing. And don't let the stubbornness get in the way of your own kind of health and well-being. So reach out if you need to anybody and seek the help when you need it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think you're not being divisive there. The statistics will show that for a myriad of reasons, men are more susceptible to the very sad outcomes of poor mental health. And I think I might have shared on this podcast before, thankfully many years ago, but I had my own troubles with depression and things like that. And it's such an interesting one that we are such a close community and we look out for each other and help each other. You've given loads of examples just in this episode alone, right, of how companies can help each other by sharing, and we've all developed great friendships through this industry. You're dead right though that when you are struggling, it's even harder to contact someone and share that. I think that message is important, but equally important is if you notice people that are normally in your life quite regularly going quiet, then that's the time to don't think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later. Well, it doesn't take long to just contact someone and ask how they are. And if you know your friends, you'll know based on the response whether there's something going on, which happens to us all, male and female. But
It
specific,
does.
I'm with you. I think there's something about men in particular. We just, especially of our generation, maybe the generation before, younger generations, I think are a bit better. But again, not to
Yeah.
generalize, but.
Our
Um,
generation is awful, and we always have been. I think we just don't, and I think and I think we've all got to take a level of responsibility. And I'm not shouldering on anybody, but there's a level of responsibility to understand kind of a few, some of those things that might just look off. And
mm,
we've said there, it's hard when you get into that place to ask for the help. But if we identify that there might be an issue, so if kind of things like they become really agreeable to stuff. So like, what do you want to do? I don't mind. Do whatever you want to do. Those types of behaviours, if they're not used to that and they're not making decisions, or they're putting their enjoyment away and kind of doing it to try and be submissive to others, then that can be something. Think about things like that. If it's your partner, how they react in public with people, how they are at home. So if when you're at home, they're just sitting and not engaging, but as soon as you get into the pub, for example, they're cracking all the jokes and being the life and soul. That could be something that's going, why is that different from one or the other? Think about, if the things like retreating away from relationships, for example. So if they're putting more effort into work and less effort into that, that can be that they haven't got enough energy emotionally to do
mm,
something. So they're getting the
mm,
work done because that's all
mm,
they've got the energy to do. And they're not doing it on purpose, but they're just trying to get through the day, because not doing the work will compound a problem if there's a problem sitting in there, especially if it's something that's deep rooted. So think about that. And then last couple of things, you know, the way people answer questions is always telling for me. If they're always, I'm all right, I'm tired, I'm doing okay. If it's
I'm
always
fine.
quite dismissive in terms of what they're doing, just think about, do we dig a bit deeper, ask the question differently, try and get them to open up a little bit. Um, Again, shouldering everything, being self-sufficient, not looking for help in anything that they do can be a sign that they're doing it. Um, Anything where they're just not getting engaged with the hobbies and things that they used to do in the past. Those can be really telling signs. And then if they start getting really angry, I think it's a really telling one. I think if really irritated by small, insignificant things, can be a real sign that they're struggling with something, because, the straw that breaks the camel's back is sometimes the most insignificant of the problems that they've had. So keep an eye on your friends and your family, and do what's right.
Couldn't agree more. And if you're listening to this, and maybe this impacts you in some way, you are more than welcome to come and talk to me and Chris and join in with our. As long as you don't mind things being very random at times.
Randomer the better for me.
Well, it's been a pleasure. We've bounced around. It's entertaining and insightful as usual. We didn't talk about football, so maybe we need to do a whole episode just chatting about football.
I'm all right for now. Maybe after Christmas. Let's just see where we are then.
I do, because of you and another friend of mine from my other football, Stu. I do have a bit of a soft spot for Leeds, but he does not like it if I'm watching them, because a few times when I've WhatsApped him to say, "Oh, I'm watching the game tonight," they've lost, and he will now send me a message saying, "Please don't watch the Leeds game tonight."
But were you watching it on Saturday?
I wasn't, no, so I'm not
Well, it's
responsible
not
for
your
that.
fault then, is it? It's just Leeds are
No,
rubbish more often than not. So that's fine.
but yeah, come on, Leeds. Well, I will. I've got a soft spot for Leeds, apart from when we play them twice this year.
Yeah, yeah. I think as long as we stay up, I'm happy. That's my very ambitious football goal. Just finished 17th.
I noticed you didn't
Uh,
reciprocate
we're
though,
all
saying
right.
you have a soft spot for Tottenham.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Up the Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs. Sorry, there you go.
Thank you very much, my
No
friend.
worries,
Love
mate.
you.
Speak to you soon. Bye. Love you.
See you. Bye.